the middle of August is here and back for another edition of the MVFC First and Goal podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Burke, and we start a really interesting series this month on officiating and video review, and we're going to really deep dive into that. So only fitting that we have the Director of Video Services from the Big Ten Conference on, and that is Tony Buyniski. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on here. Before we get into your background, I wanted to kind of have you explain a little bit about what exactly your title means and what it all encompasses, because I think the average person, it's a little bit ambiguous.
Sure, absolutely. So the title and the overall, oversight of our department is Video and Technology for Officiating. And we focus that across, obviously, within the conference itself, all of our conference sports within the Big Ten Conference, and then all the consortiums that the conference is involved with. So what we talk about and what we mean by a consortium is multiple conferences will pool their resources financially and administratively together, and we will support them in that area. So in football, we support the Big Ten Conference, the Mid-American Conference, the MAC, and then obviously the Missouri Valley Football Conference. In basketball, we could dive in a little bit deeper. It's bigger. It's Big Ten, the MAC, the Summit, the Horizon, the Metro Atlantic, the Northern Sun, and then we just added the America East this past offseason. And then luckily for us, it's just Big Ten ice hockey in regards to actual video for officiating needs and then instant replay. The conference office itself within the Big Ten, not trying to tell everybody what it is we're up to and doing, but we're starting a pilot program this year to standardize replay for volleyball and wrestling within the conference itself. So those two sports will also fall under our jurisdiction. And again, everything that encompasses with video and technology and officiating, instant replay, the Vocero headsets that you see, the NFL officials wear in Big Ten and Big 12, and they're starting to work their way down the levels, the communication piece. All of that we support, as well as acquiring video for the officials to review. A lot of people think that the officials just show up on a Saturday or Sunday and they're officiating and they don't do any prep during the week whatsoever. It's our job to get that video from the teams themselves and then distribute them out accordingly to all of our not only officials that are within the program, but also our coordinators and our trainers and our position trainers who are actually training these guys and women now in our consortium on a week-by-week basis. And so what we will do is we will take the coaching video that the teams use to evaluate themselves for practice and games, and then we will intercut television with that. So when we distribute it back out to everyone to evaluate and to review, they have at least 3 or 4 different angles of a particular play. And as everybody knows, anything that controversial happens, whether it's a penalty or a no call, you're going to see multiple replays and multiple angles of that play. So we're going to be able to evaluate it and know, did we get the call right or did we miss one?
Yeah.
And so there basically is nowhere for these guys to hide anymore. That we will grab every piece of video available, so that not only they can review it, but they also then get evaluated on their performance.
Okay, that makes sense. You mentioned all the different conferences for the respective sports. How does that complicate your life when, more and more conferences are getting added? And then, like you said, you guys are kind of doing a run right now with volleyball and wrestling. So you throw that into the mix, and, I'm sure it would probably even make it more difficult just from the sense that you're a football guy. Obviously, you played it in college, but if you're not maybe as familiar with volleyball per se, you're having to really school yourself in the intricacies of that sport.
Absolutely. That's what we're doing right now. And luckily for myself, it's not just myself doing this role. I've got a great staff here in the command center, and Matt Bronschneidel, our associate director, Joe Hamada, who's just been recently promoted to assistant director. And then we have a new video intern starting this year, Sam Arvanet. And without those guys and the guys that came before them, we really wouldn't be able to do what it is that we're doing. We're able to right now to focus with all those sports that you mentioned and I've mentioned. We're able to focus in on Tony's responsible for the overall department, but his specialty is to work with Bill Carolla on our officiating staff for football. Matt will work with Rick Boyages with basketball. Joe will work with Steve Petrowski for ice hockey, and then now adding these two new sports on our areas. It's let's evaluate it on a after this first year and see, does it require more a personalized touch, or can we sit there as a group of four collectively obtain the goals that are needed? Mm-hmm. So it presents challenges. It's one of those things that probably our coordinators would like not to have all four of us on emails, but and that's unfortunately right now that's the nature of what it is. If I'm out taking care of things off site, or Matt's out of the office or Joe's out of the office, all of us need to know exactly what's going on, so make sure that we're able to provide that same support for all of our coordinators. Not just say that Bill's got to always come to me or Rick always has to come to me, but we all have to have the knowledge base of what's going on in that area and know all the different issues that are coming up.
How much does your expertise in football, having played it at a high college level, help you with the day-to-day responsibilities of your job?
I think it helps a lot. I think a lot about my background, not only just playing, but then a couple of years into playing and injuries setting in, and I credit Tim Rux, the head coach at Carthage College at the time, that took a chance on me and allowed me to be a student assistant coach. And so he gave me video. You are our video editor, you are our video coordinator, and the second you don't get your work done, you're not going out to practice to coach on the field. So not only did I have that player's mindset, but also then a coaching mindset. So I know what these coaches are looking for. A lot of my background has been on the coaching side of things. When I left Carthage College, I went to the University of Illinois, worked for Ron Zook there. After 5 years of working with Coach Zook, took a job with the Cincinnati Bengals, and then came here, and I'm getting ready to start my 5th year here at the conference. So everything that I've done, or Matt and Joe and Sam have done in our office, and those that have come before them, have had the team background. So we utilize everything that we utilize here in the office is the same stuff that the teams are using. We've just now brought it over and added an officiating flavor to it. So at the end of the year, I can easily, end of the year, middle of the year, each week, I can pull up reports to give to Bill and say, these were all of our defensive pass interference calls during the week. These were graded as correct. These were graded as incorrect. And we can start to find trends and see trends, and Bill can develop his message during the week to our officials of, hey guys, we really need to get a little bit better on spotting the ball, or we really have to get better on these cut blocks, or obviously targeting is always a main emphasis, so that's always part of the weekly instruction.
Yeah.
But we can dive down deeper into that, not only just in football, but in all of our sports that we support, because of the fact that everything that we're doing on our end is the same stuff that we would do on the team side of things if we're trying to pull up, reports on formation and power runs or play action passes and et cetera. So we all have that team background that, in all honesty, the things that we've had to learn and to school ourselves up on is actually the officiating piece, is to actually know, like, who is supposed to cut, who's responsible for that gunner that's running down the sideline, so that we know who missed the call.
Okay.
We know the rules of the game. We know the technology itself because of what the teams use, but it's more of, hey, let's school ourselves up on the actual lingo and what is correct and what's incorrect in regards to officiating.
You mentioned, your stints with the Illini and then with the Cincinnati Bengals. And how did it come to be then this job at the Big Ten Conference?
I go back and I credit Tim Rux. Coach Rux took a chance on me coming out of high school, and I from Cincinnati, Ohio, went all the way up to Kenosha, Wisconsin to continue playing while I was going to school. And Coach Rux knew Ron Zook at Illinois, and I had finished my undergrad and my graduate degree there at Carthage, and I was looking for a job. And because of my I wouldn't say expertise, but my experience in, coaching and in video, it was, look, I'm going to stick with one and get to it. A lot of guys will sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to use the video to get into coaching, and I'm going to then build and be a coach. And I wasn't that way. I wanted to say, well, whatever I got my chance at, that's what I was going to stick with, and that's what I was going to go with. And there was an assistant position open at the time at Illinois, and little Division III guy, you don't know how small those coaching circles are. And Tim Ruck said, I know Ron Zook, I'll give him a call. And I said, Coach, you don't know Ron Zook. Like, there's no way. Like, there's no way you know Coach Zook. And him and I are sitting there in his office, and sure enough, he pulls out his cell phone, he gives him a call right then and there, and he's got me on speaker with Coach Zook. And he said, Tim, if that guy's good enough for you, he's good enough for me. I'll have our video guy give him a call. And Greg Bruner, who was the video director at the time at Illinois, gave me a call, and the rest was history. And then and same there. It's just all about the relationships. So all the relationships that I made at the University of Illinois was able to help me get the job with the Bengals. And then the relationships that I had with Coach Lewis and Travis Brammer and Ken Stearman there at the Bengals, I was able to get the insider track here at the Big Ten Conference. And it's all about who you know in this business, but what you know is going to keep you there. And it's something that I really pride myself on that, and I make sure that I'm always trying to stay on top of things as regards to what's new and what's coming out, so that not only I continue to get better, but we can also whoever it is that I'm working for, in this case the officials continue to get better, and hopefully there's more consistency.
The student coaching obviously had a huge impact on what you're doing now. But when you came into college, as a freshman at Carthage College, what were you majoring in? What were your intentions, of maybe a profession, and obviously it probably changed.
I joke about that a lot with my wife and even family. Is my undergrad was in business, and I was looking at, whether it was accounting or sales or marketing, all those human resources, all the general business topics that come together. And that quickly changed. Going into junior year, it was, all right, I'm going to be, every time that I'm not in the classroom, I'm in the coach's office, and I'm learning, and I'm breaking down film, and I'm working on the computer, learning the new, reports and the new nuances of the equipment. And then when I wasn't in the coaching office, I was going to class. And Coach Rux then gave me an opportunity after I completed my undergrad to come back and get a master's. And so I got my master's in education, guidance, and counseling. And again, looking at it from a perspective of the coaching world at that time of, hey, if I don't get anything in college, at least I can go back and I can coach at a high school, and I've got the guidance and counseling certificate that I can sit there and become that counselor and work at a high school. And we joke about it a lot sometimes in this business, not only with family and friends, but also the peers, in that those who have started like myself, right? There's a lot of us, right away into it. We don't know anything different, and it's one of those things that it puts a little bit of a fear in you, I guess, of saying, well, what happens when this is all taken away? Because I don't know the business world. I don't know. I haven't had to use my degree since I was in college. So it's like I said, it changes pretty quickly, and just because you specialize in something, doesn't mean that you're going to have to be pigeonholed into that particular area. Someone's always going to hopefully take a chance on you, and then you just got to go out and prove it.
Yeah. When you took the job at the Big Ten Conference, what kind of training did you have to, initially go through? And then also, what kind of continual learning and education do you have to do?
Sure. So obviously, coming from the team side of things, the biggest challenge for me was the replay aspect. Not knowing anything about the replay systems, not knowing the rules of instant replay, not knowing what the actual equipment involved. So that was a huge learning curve right away, jumping into this business or into this position. And same with even Matt and Joe and Sam. It's something that they you don't have that type of experience on the coaching side of things. But the one thing that you can bring, and what shows the coordinators, is, look, we can do this with reports, we can do this with cut-ups and filter sets and reporting. And it was something that that will then kind of turn things the other way of I have some weaknesses here in the replay aspect kind of things, but then you also have the strengths of getting them the video and getting them all the answers, and even the commissioners all the different stats that they need on a daily or weekly basis. And so that's something that obviously was a huge gap coming in, but we've got a great partnership with our replay providers and DV Sport on football and basketball side of things, and Exos on hockey. And I've had relationships with them because of their roles in the coaching world, and so I was able to reach out to them and be able to get a crash course in instant replay.
Yeah. One of the things I'm most excited to hear about is just to have you paint the picture on a typical college football Saturday of what the command center in the Big Ten conference office looks like. What's a typical day, typical hours, and even the days following it I'm sure are really busy for you as you try and get everything together.
Sure. So Saturday is obviously it's game day. We get into the office at about 9 a.m. in the morning. We set up all of our computers, all the DVRs, and get the games, those 11 o'clock Central Start games set on the TVs that we have here in the office. We have about our TV selection, our video wall, so to speak, is 9 screens, 8 60-inch TVs on the outer sides, and a 133-inch projector in the middle. We've got 14 DirecTV DVRs and 2 Mac Minis that we can pick up the ESPN3 broadcasts. And the prep work obviously during the week is what games are going to go on where, what games are going on which TVs, and then also identifying which officials it's their off week that are going to come in and actually watch a game from start to finish. So they're going to watch the Ohio State-Michigan game. They're going to watch the Penn State-Northwestern game, and they're going to sit there and watch a game in its entirety, and they're going to identify plays that the average person just doesn't know about officiating. Not only also all the no calls, but say that head linesman is moving down the line too quickly, or the referee's not positioned right, or the announcement was, he used the wrong signal, and stuff that the average lay person doesn't really know. So then, and Bill Carollo, our coordinator officials, Bill, and then Commissioner Delaney, and a bunch of the other senior staff members here in the office will come in, and they'll be watching the games as well. And we want to just have a finger on the pulse, so you will, of being able to see everything that happens. Those coaches are going to call as soon as the game's over with, and I know it from being on the coaching side with Coach Zook, and they're going to call right after the game. And so Bill needs to be able to see exactly what happened. With the DVRs, we're obviously able to run everything back for him, slow it down, and we're going to be able to have an answer for Coach when he calls right away of, Coach, yeah, you know what, we got that one right. You need to go back and look at this, or you know what, Coach, yeah, you know what, you're right. We messed up, and it'll be addressed. So we're there from 9 a.m. all the way until that last night game, whether it's Big Ten, MAC, or Missouri Valley completes. And so if that happens to be 11 o'clock at night, then that's when it is. So we have, we don't starve ourselves. We've got snacks. We get lunch, and we get all that stuff. So don't feel bad for us on those type of hours. But and as the officials are evaluating games, and Bill's making his notes, us on the command center staff on the back end, we're capturing the TV content into our in-house editing system. So that way, when we do get the video from the coaches itself, we have it already it's each play's already been identified, so it's easier for us to intercut. So we know that this is play one, play one, this is play two, this is play three, all the way down the line, and then we match everything up, and then we're able to ship it out while those games are going on. So our general process on that end takes us, from within about 2 hours after the completion of the game, the officials have available on their on our secured video website to be able to review a finalized product of their game, and that's obviously assuming that everything goes well on the team side of things, of them being able to send us their coaching video.
Yeah.
But at least within 10-15 minutes after the game is over with, not only are they can get a TV broadcast of the game from the replay system locally, they also have something from us up on the website as well. So there's 2 different avenues for those officials to review their performance.
Wow.
By the time they get out of the shower.
Yeah, that's incredible. I didn't realize the turnaround was that quick. I thought it might be like Sunday morning by the time they got everything, or Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, so Sunday we'll come back in, obviously, and we'll finalize everything that we didn't finalize on Saturday. So definitely for certain that night game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at 11 o'clock. At that point, it's 11 o'clock, 11:30, and you know what? I love being here.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna wait around another hour and a half to get the coaching video from the teams at that point. And we'll wait. That way, then it allows for the other little stragglers to come through. You have those afternoon games if they're having issues on their end. Because first and foremost for us, we want the video directors on each campus. They obviously have to take care of their coaches.
Yeah.
And we know that because we've been in those shoes. So take care of your coaches first, and then obviously everybody else in the conference, and then worry about us. So it's always at those open lines of communication to make sure that the schools are constantly communicating with each other. Of, hey guys, I had an issue with my end zone camera, and it's going to be a while because I need to get it from so and so when they get back from campus or back to their campus.
Okay.
And so Sunday is generally more of a again, finalizing all the video that we didn't get the previous day, the previous day.
Yeah.
And then we'll start our data entry process of, the website that our officials use to report all their fouls and all their plays of interest is called QuickRef, and we'll go into QuickRef and we'll start downloading and ingesting all the different terminology and data onto those specific plays. So that way, at the end of the year and during the week, we can get to those reports that we talked about earlier of, hey, not only are here's the defensive pass interference calls, but here's the video that goes along with it.
Okay.
And and then at the end of the year, here's all the defensive pass interferences from the entire season. These are all broken up out by correct call, incorrect call, et cetera.
Yeah.
So Sunday is generally timing-wise for us. I mean, in all honesty, because it was a long night the night before, we generally get in around 10 o'clock the next morning. Again, giving schools time to send us their video.
Yeah.
And then we're generally out of there before the second NFL game starts.
Oh, that's great.
So it's not a long day on Sunday.
Yeah.
Because then at that point, if anything comes up after that point on Sunday, we've got everybody has email and on their phones. We have access to our computers remotely via our own laptops, so we can sit at home and we can remote in if something major comes up that we can get it out to Bill and his staff.
Yeah, that's nice. My conversation with Tony continues shortly, but if you're enjoying this edition of the MVFC First and Goal podcast, check out all the Lineup Media Group offerings featuring your favorite sports as well as non-sports podcasts too. Now back to the show. Tony, what would you consider the most interesting part about your job?
Oh, I think that's a good question because we touch on everything. I mean, we see the uniforms prior to them actually being displayed. They got to get approval.
Yeah.
So I would say a neat part was we saw the Ohio State black uniforms before they were even released to the public, just
nice.
To make sure that they were, legal to use. So that's an interesting part. Obviously, the communication with with coaches. A lot of people would love to be able to sit there and have those, just hear what's going on in those coaches meetings after the season, whether what they're talking about, plays and policies, and obviously the instant replay side of things is great and it's neat. Another thing that a lot of my friends like is when we get into basketball season, a lot of my friends will send me screenshots of the Big Ten basketball tournament, because during the tournament I serve as the timeout coordinator.
Oh, nice.
So I'm sitting at the scores table and sitting next to the replay system and talking to television, letting the officials and TV know obviously when we're coming back from commercial and when we're playing. And then going through the review process of, hey, they've got more angles coming, or this is what they're looking to review. So anytime there's a review within a couple minutes after that review being over with, my phone just starts blowing up with pictures from people of, hey, you're on TV. I go, yeah, yes, I know. Thank you. So there's so many things just to narrow down one particular. Traveling is always great. We travel down to Indy for our Big Ten championship game for football, and this year we'll be going to Madison Square Garden for the men's basketball tournament. Nice. Last year was Washington, D.C. Hockey's traveled to, Joe Louis and Minneapolis, and so there's too many things just to name one. But I guess if I had to, it would be doing what I love doing what I'm doing. I love the actual this side of things, and I don't like. I sometimes rub it into my peers at the schools. I get to go home and be with my wife and be with my daughter every day for dinner, with the exception of Saturday.
Yeah,
and that's something that it's doing everything that you want to do and then having the quality of life outside of the job as well. That's probably the biggest rewarding thing about this job, is, again, having all those great experiences that I just mentioned, but then knowing that I'm not sacrificing family time with the exception of a Saturday.
Yeah, which especially as you get older, especially when you get in your 30s, you start to realize, hey, that stuff's really important. So
exactly. It's something that my wife and I talk about that often of, hey, just imagine if we were still back in Champaign and, you only lived 5 minutes away from the office, but I wouldn't see you until 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, when the coaches meetings got over with, and then you'd have to leave, again, first thing in the morning for those, 6 o'clock meetings. And now it's, hey, I can be there when Caroline wakes up in the morning and help out around the house, and then definitely be home for dinner. And whether it's making dinner on the grill or my wife or even picking something up on the way home, that's probably the most rewarding piece.
This may not be a totally fair question, because again, I'm asking you to choose one particular game or moment, but is there a particular scenario that stands out in your mind that for you and your crew, you felt like you really impacted a game or a trend after the fact with officiating, just by the video review and all the stuff you guys cut up and put together?
Like you said, it's hard to identify one thing. It's always just nice knowing that a lot of the information that we provide to the coordinators and even in the commissioners as well in their respective conferences, that it's being utilized and it's being used. And it's one of those things that they know it and they have an inkling of it. Sometimes it's great that when Commissioner Delaney goes, hey, I think I have an idea on how this is going, but I really want to see the data of it. And you go, okay. And you're so enthralled and excited about the project, and you do it and you give it to him, and he's like, yep, that's exactly what I thought. Great work. And then he uses it for something down the road, or same with Bill. There's not a one particular piece. There's so many little things that it's what every video director and video guy knows. The cardinal rule is we do a lot of things behind the scenes, and sometimes it's a thankless job. But we all know that we're doing a good job, but sometimes there is those negative moments, and you want to minimize those, because obviously you can't hide bad video, you can't hide a mistake when it comes to that kind of stuff. It's one of those things that if they don't, the old saying used to be for us, if they don't say anything, we're doing a good job. If they say something, we've got a problem.
Yeah. You played at a time, and I'm making it sound like you're old, and you're not old. But, probably, and at a level too where video review and information, at least that you have now, didn't exist. What's it like to see it from your perspective now, knowing that you're on the other side of it years ago, and how critical do you think it is that, it continues to be a big part of college football?
I think the thing is, obviously knowing what happened, back when I was playing, it wasn't there. I graduated college in 2004. So, early, senior year of high school was, 1999 season. And, 5 years later is when the Big Ten experimented with instant replay. So, being able to see that evolution just from a fan's perspective to now, obviously knowing that I'm a part of it is great. And it's something that, as you start to realize, and everybody probably is starting to see, you're not going backwards when it comes to technology. You're always going to move forward. You're always looking for something different. Whether we're testing the field monitors at the sideline, or now the colleges are getting into a centralized collaboration, bringing in multiple feeds at one time when it used to be into basically a computerized, a server basically living up in the press box, when it used to be a TiVo in the earlier stages of instant replay. So it's always changing, it's always evolving, and it's something that it's neat to be on that side of things, and starting to and to have a hand in it. So it's like I said, you're not going backwards.
Yeah.
It's only going to continue to go forward and continue to get better. You hear all the times about the 360 cameras and the stitching, and how now the stitching process for 360 is getting that much better, and who knows how long it'll be until we could potentially do that. That's something that everyone always says, well, that's probably the next thing. Like, well, you do realize it takes a good, you can't go back and review a play after you've already had four or five plays, because that's how long it's taking right now. But there will be a time, I don't know in my lifetime, but there probably will be a time where potentially that could be, the standard.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest difference, when you worked in the Bengals video department, between, the video departments at the NFL level and then video services at the college level?
Sure. I would say at the NFL, it's everybody's doing everything. And you don't have students to work for you. You can't go out and hire somebody to, work, make $8 an hour for, student aid or what have you, and relying on an 18 to 20-year-old on shooting practice and making sure that it's right. You have to do it yourself at the NFL level. You have a lot more to personal pride in it, I think. I remember specifically always sometimes having to go to Coach Zook and say, hey, Coach, I'm sorry, we missed a play here, we did this, and it was probably always one of the worst parts of my day, is having to go tell them that we missed a play, or let alone a drill. And now in the NFL, you don't have that. It's everybody's, everybody in that video department's getting paid for a reason, and everyone knows they have a job to do, and it just gets done. And you don't have, in the NFL, because of the roster sizes, everybody is servicing each other, so you really will only have one team period or 7-on-7 or going on at one time, versus in college with the roster sizes, you're going to have defense on one end and offense on the other, and you're going to have at least 4 or 5, maybe even 6 cameras at the college level. When in the NFL, you're at the most, you're probably really only going to have 3 or 4.
Okay.
So because of the fact not only that but also the staffing issue of it's going to be hard for an owner to justify hiring 5 or 6 full-time video people just for practice, because what else are they going to do throughout the season, or throughout, not even through the season, but through the off season.
Yeah. How hard is it? Obviously Saturdays, you're in the Big Ten Command Center, but let's say, you're getting home to catch that second NFL game on a Sunday, or there's a college football game on a Wednesday, another conference, one that you're obviously not responsible for. How hard is it for you now to watch a football game as a fan and not be analyzing and having all this, stuff going on in your head?
I can't. Simple answer, I can't. It used to be when I was working for the teams. It used to be when I first started at Carthage, and it was not only doing video, but then also coaching. And I could pinpoint, the tackle missing the block, or why this play didn't succeed. And then now it's into officiating. It's like, oh boy, not only did you have that, but you had this and that. I can't watch it. So in all honesty, I will only watch when I'm at home. During the week, I will only watch those games that obviously are involving our conference and our officials, and then Sunday only the Bengals because otherwise sometimes it's just too much. And I think most of the guys here in the office would agree is sometimes you just get sported out with everything. And we'll have no problem turning on the HGTVs and watching those fixer-upper shows. And,
oh yeah.
Just because again, like you said, it's so hard to watch a game as a fan, and it's even still hard for me to watch those Bengals games as a fan. Again, growing up in Cincinnati, I grew up a Bengals fan, so going to work for them for the year that I did was a lifelong dream. And you can't. It's so hard to separate. It's so hard to separate fandom from the actual, knowing that hey, there's going to be mistakes.
Totally. You mentioned earlier, your wife Katie and daughter Caroline. So I want to get into them for a second and give you a chance to talk about them. Let's start with Caroline. I believe she's around 1 year old.
She's 6 months,
and she's super adorable. So how would you describe yourself as a dad, and how has she really impacted your life?
It's been. I hope my wife would agree that I'm hands-on. I'm fortunate enough to have a niece and a nephew, and for our niece, Katie and I are her godparents, and we go down and visit them in Alabama. And this was prior to Caroline being born, and I'm playing with Madison on the floor, and Katie and my brother and sister-in-law are laughing that she's like, let's pretend we're sharks, and we're literally swimming on the floor, and we're making that drive back, and Katie just goes, I hope you do that with our daughter. And I said, absolutely. I'm gonna early on it's gonna be the fun dad, and then obviously with God gave me a girl for a reason, and I'm gonna be extremely stressed and probably overprotective when she get 12 or 13 years from now. But she means the world to me. She brightens my day. I love it when she smiles. Just the other day, she started recognizing, hearing her own name and turning her head. So just being able to see the little changes that happen with her every day it's amazing.
Is she crawling yet?
She is not crawling. She's attempting to. We put her on tummy time, and she'll scoot backwards.
Okay.
But she's now sitting up on. She's doing better sitting up on her own, and we just started giving her the rice cereal and the oatmeal, and Katie started doing this baby-led weaning, which they're giving her steamed or soft, like sweet potatoes and celery and stuff, and it's funny at dinner time. She, she obviously is sitting in between us, and she'll always stare at me. And so, Katie jokes with me, and it's no secret in our house that I don't like vegetables. And she goes, she's watching you to see if you eat your vegetables. And I go, well, she doesn't know right now that they're not vegetables. So she's watching me use the fork and the spoon, and giving her then the spoon to watch her then mimic those movements. It definitely now puts you on edge of I'm gonna have to watch what I do around her because she's a sponge.
For sure. What about Katie? Your wife. What would you like to say about her? I guess what are you allowed to say about her?
I'm allowed to say pretty much anything I want. She'll probably would disagree. She's great. She's my rock. She's my best friend. She's extremely accomplished. She's a physical therapist working to get her certification in Pilates, certified strength and conditioning, certified athletic trainer, everything. So she I guess it's free. She one of these days she's going to charge me when I tell her my back hurts or my hips out of alignment, and she's got to get me on the floor and and do the different stretches, and but she's super mom. She takes care of Caroline and me, and anything that I can always do to try to help her. I do my best, but she definitely runs the household, and I'm not ashamed to say it, and I know she would agree that she definitely has final say on everything that goes on in our house.
Yeah. You also have a very photogenic bulldog.
Yes.
And what kind of personality, I'm not sure if it's a he or she, so you'll have to clarify that, but what kind of personality does he or she bring to the family on a daily basis?
Well, we're lucky. We have two of them.
Oh, you have two? Okay.
Yeah, we have a boy and a girl, Jax and Lila. Jax we've had since he was a puppy, so we've had him since he was 8 weeks old. Jax will be 6 in October. And then Lila we actually got from a local rescue here in town that specializes in bulldogs. Lila was a stray and had some dog friendly issues, I guess if you would say. And when we were willing to work with that, and right when she met Jax on the home visit or whatever, it was the foster mom at the time was like, I've never seen her do that before. This is great. So. Both of them they are handfuls. They are both, obviously bulldogs are stubborn. Jax is probably more stubborn than Lila. They love being on top of the couch, smashing down our couch cushions. Lila sleeps with her tongue out and it gets all dried and crusty. She snores worse than I do. Jax will not jump up on the couch until you lay down because he wants to lay in between your feet. They are handfuls.
Yeah.
But they are so they just as I'm sure anybody who has pets can see the personality in them every single day, and they definitely are not lacking in that department.
Yeah, I can relate. We have a chocolate lab, and just the same thing. She's spoiled, and she's got quite the personality.
Yeah, they're great.
How have the dogs taken to Caroline?
They no issues. We brought Caroline home from the hospital, and Jax came right over. I sat down on the couch. Jax came right over to me, and he turned around and he put his back to me and just sat there. And taking him to the vet a couple days later for his annual checkup, the vet was like, "That's exactly what you want a dog to do. It means that he's protecting the pack." And she's now getting into that moment, the use of her hands and wanting to touch and grab things. And it's funny, she'll sit on my lap, and the dogs will come over and they'll smell her, and whether they lick her feet or as she's kind of slowly reaching her hand out there, and they'll lick her hand. But as soon as she starts to do a quick swipe for a pet, Jax runs away. Jax wants no part of it, and Lila will just sit there and she kind of just takes it. But they both around her are great. Other than, like I said, Jax right now is not really ready to be petted by her.
Yeah. As we wind down the interview, one thing I feel like, that replay and video reviews, I feel like among fans, it sometimes gets a bad rap. And I think more than anything from a time standpoint, and you see it more so with Major League Baseball games, going longer. But what do you feel like is the long-term solution to that as far as game time and making it something so that the fans better understand, what's going on?
Sure. It's something that obviously we're always looking at. That's one of the big emphasis this year for officiating that if you talk to Bill, he would say as well is game times. We're getting up there and average FBS time last year was 3 hours and 24 minutes, and that's longer than a Major League Baseball game, and that's a problem. And everybody who has a say in that right now recognizes that, and they're trying to take measures to alleviate that. Obviously, everybody, like as you mentioned, people sometimes give replay the bad rap, and the thing that everybody forgets is that it's got to be clear, and it's got to be obvious, and you can't assume. You can't sit there and say, hey, that ball that guy's holding, I know he's holding it there and I know it's over the line, but if you don't clearly see it, you can't change it. And it's one of those things that trying to someone who wants to be stubborn and bullheaded and not listen is gonna obviously they're gonna take issue with that. But it's one of those things that, again, replay is here. It's not going away. It's one of those things that you wanted to put in place of, hey, originally it was let's fix the obvious calls. And now everybody wants to dive deeper into, well, replay should fix pass interference and fix the holding calls. And you do realize then when you do that, the more stoppages that you're going to do, the longer that game's going to be.
Yeah.
So there's finding that balance. And all I can say is that we're constantly looking at things. It's one of those things that we take pride in. We tell our replay, back when it first started, it was, hey, if you got something that was under 3 minutes, people were, high-fiving in the press box and loving it. And now it's, hey, if you're in there for you're trying to make a decision and you're at that 2 minute mark, you better hurry up and get out, because obviously then you don't have it.
Yeah.
And you got to stay with then what's the call on the field, because that's the first rule in replay. Is the call on the field is always right unless proven otherwise. And a lot of people sometimes don't like that when it comes back with the stands call. Is they feel it's a cop out, and the fact is look, you gotta again, you have to assume that call on the field is right unless you have clear evidence to prove otherwise. And even though you might not have clear evidence to confirm it, but you don't definitely have the clear evidence to reverse it. So that's where the stands call comes into play.
How many different angles are you guys typically looking at, when they're reviewing something?
Sure. So right now in the Big Ten, we utilize a multi-capture feature. So we're bringing in 4 different angles at one time that are available as soon as the play is over with. Mm-hmm. We're using what we call the program feed. So that is the exact feed that everybody at home is seeing.
Okay.
Then we bring in a high end zone camera, and then an opposite low end zone camera. So it'll be on the opposite side of the field on the low side. Okay. And then the 4th camera we'll bring in is either the cart camera, which is the cart that drives up and down the sideline, mm-hmm. or if there is no cart present, then there generally is a handheld camera that travels down with the play.
Yeah.
So those 4 angles we're bringing in real time as it's happening. So when we get into right now in the Big Ten, when we get into that review process, we can sync all 4 of those angles because we're bringing them in at the exact same time. So our replay officials will then, when they're looking at their monitor, they can hit a button and it's a quad where they can see all 4 angles up at the same time. And as they're doing the jog shuttle wheel, they'll see each angle move, so everything is synced. Now, obviously, when television shows a replay of a completely different angle that have not captured in live, we can't sync that.
Yeah.
That's because that's a different point in time. So when it comes to that, then we'd have to obviously rely on television for that. But basically, we'll have, at the end of the play, we have 4 angles readily available for those officials to review. And it's been helping us in our process, at least in the Big Ten, of saying we need to stop the game now, because out of these angles that we currently have, we don't have a clear answer. And then television knows, well, we've already sent them those angles. If we have, say this is an 8-camera shoot, then they have 4 other cameras that they could potentially send.
Okay.
And the thing, and just as television is sending to the folks at home, they're not going to send every single camera angle because they're having a show to produce, and they're having it's their show. And why show something that of a camera angle of the crowd when that camera happened to be on the crowd, when it's not going to help the officials and it doesn't help their broadcast whatsoever.
Yeah. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to add, or that you feel like is important that the viewers and listeners out there should know?
I touched on it earlier. Just a kind of reminder is these officials, they work hard, and there's a big cry out there for full-time officials, and these guys put in a lot of time and a lot of hours, not only in reading the rule book, but also with all the video that we send them to review. Again, they're not just showing up on a Saturday and collecting a paycheck. There's no bias whatsoever against for teams or against a coach. There's none of that. It's these guys are going to call what they see, and just as everybody else is out there, I know can't say that they're perfect because I'm not. These guys aren't perfect either when it comes to making calls, and there is that human element, but they try, and put yourselves in their shoes for a minute, which we actually did during in the Big Ten. We put Mike Hall, our side for BTN, and he went and worked the Penn State spring game a couple of years ago, and he flat out said it. He goes, I don't know how they do it. He's like, I know I lost my keys at least 50% of the time. The guy who I'm supposed to be watching, I wasn't watching him. and that's not saying that that's an excuse on the officiating side of things, because they, those guys don't do that, but it's a lot harder than it looks. And these guys aren't just showing up for a Saturday football game and putting on the stripes and walking out there and saying that these guys are right off the street. They're not.
Well said. Tony, I think I've kept you about twice as long as I said that I initially was going to, but it was fascinating, and I appreciate you taking the time. And I love your passion and energy for everything you're doing.
My pleasure, Kelly. Thanks for having me, and good luck to everyone as the season gets going here in a couple weeks. Yeah,
it's an exciting time. Well, thanks again. And if you like what you heard from Tony Buyniski in our MVFC First and Goal podcast, take a moment and subscribe. lineupmedia.fm also is home to many other podcast shows like The Circuit of Success, The Drop, and Coach Your Brains Out, to name a few. You can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher.